In this episode, I'm breaking down what really should and shouldn't be done before a puppy leaves at 8 weeks. I cover microchipping, worming, vaccination timing, maternal immunity, lepto concerns, and titre blood testing. And I question whether some routine protocols are truly evidence-led or driven by wider corporate profit models within the veterinary industry. If you're breeding or bringing a puppy home, this will help you think critically and make informed decisions that prioritize long-term health over convenience. Welcome to the Bulldog Owners Podcast, where I host a passionate conversation about pedigree dogs. I'm Sarah, and here we cut through the myths and misinformation to talk honestly about life with bulldogs. We are having a car chat today. So I've got just over an hour's drive. I've got baby Bison, baby B as I call him, in the car as part of his socialisation, especially for show dogs. They need to be comfortable being crated because it shows your dogs have to be crated when they're not in the ring. And of course, they have to be comfortable travelling huge distances in the car. I mean, hours and hours and hours on end. So he is having part of his socialisation today, and I will cover the wider topic of socialisation in another podcast. I think every breed has their own specific socialisation path, which is about how to prepare their development and their ability to adapt and cope in the world as an adult. I think every breed, because of their DNA and because of the function that they've been bred for, actually think their socialisation needs to be specific to them. So it's something I've learnt a lot about, but there's different experiences a Labrador puppy should have compared to a Bulldog puppy. But that's for another day. So Bison's with me. He's only a baby, obviously, so he might have a little whinge. Hopefully he just gets bored. What you want is that they just get bored and they just sleep. It's amazing when you have a really well-travelling dog that just doesn't stresses and just will get in the car and go sleep and relax. I've had all sorts where dogs pant all the way. They've tried to surf all the way, so they're like counteract the car's movements and balance, which just must be really tiring on a long journey. Some that totally stress out, rub their heads on the crates and end up with hot spots and all sorts. So yeah, part of being the perfect show dog is that they travel and it's absolutely no drama to them. It says a lot because they've got to get used to my driving as well. But yeah, in this episode, I want to talk to you about why I'm in the car. So I'm currently in work mode. And again, that's something I'll cover in a different podcast because people think that my job is breeding dogs, and it certainly isn't. That's my passion. But my job is helping other people breed dogs and make sure that they do it safely and successfully. And I will come on to that. I recently featured on Vinnie Jones in the Country, which if you haven't seen it, series 3, episode 3, you can see me doing my day job with Vinnie Jones. So yeah, I'll circulate in good circles. But again, that's for another day. But this time, I'm not going to Vinnie Jones's house, but I'm going to equally as important client, and I'm going to microchip a Labrador litter. There's various interventions that I can support them with, and the final part of that is puppy microchipping, litter microchipping. Now, I thought it's worth us having a conversation because I get asked about this a lot from both sides of the coin. So from people that are breeding puppies, they're not quite sure what they should do and what the legal requirements are and expectations are when a puppy leaves for a new home, and what are the nice to haves, or maybe even what could potentially be negative to the puppy. And then on the flip side of the coin, as a puppy owner, when you go and pick up your puppy at 8 weeks old, which is the legal age in the UK to buy a puppy, what should you expect that breeder to have done with that puppy? And I'm talking specifically in regards to vaccination protocols, worming protocols, because they vary massively and they're quite important to the health of the puppy. So I'm going to microchip a litter at the moment. Anyone that doesn't know what microchipping is, it kind of replaced tattooing as a form of identification for a puppy. Back in the day, it was tattooing, which must be slightly painful for the dog, and the patience needed. I've never had a dog tattooed. I'm sure it probably still happens in some part of the world, and I'm sure for some people, tattoo might be more preferential than microchipping, but microchipping is basically the gold standard, I suppose, what you expect of puppy or dog identification. Now actually also includes cats. And other animals are also microchipped, such as horses, tortoises. There's all kind of breeds because it helps you identify them. So we nearly got there with the ID cards in the UK, didn't we? But it got booted out. It basically is dependent on the size of the animal, but for a dog, it's just slightly larger than a grain of rice. It's actually inserted into the barrel of a needle. The needle gets put into the animal underneath the skin, like any typical injection. Then the syringe plunger pushes the microchip underneath the skin. You take the needle out, it all heals over. And then you can buy a microchip scanner, and then that dog becomes identifiable because on the chip, or what's connected to the chip, is a unique identifying number that tells you that that chip is then on a database somewhere, hopefully with the chip company, registered to an owner. Now, there was a big change, I'm guessing dates, might have been 2017, and then it's recently come in for cats, but that is a total guess. But I think it is about 10 years. It was a legal requirement for breeders to microchip their puppies before they go to their new home. And then it is the owner's legal requirement to make sure that the puppy is registered to them in their most current address. So it's sort of like a multiple stage process. So me, as being a microchipper implanter, there's a clear audit trail. So I buy them, they're registered to me as the implanter, and I go and implant the dog. Then I transfer the ownership to the breeder, and then the breeder then transfers the ownership to the owner. There's an auditable pathway for any animal that's been microchipped. It helps in many ways. So not only just from a lost dog, so a dog gets out, some, dog warden or a vet can scan them, look up the chip number on the system, find out who the owners are, give the owners a call and say, look, we've got your pet here, you need to come and collect him. But it's also helpful matrimonial situations, and the chip number very much is considered that whoever's legally on there is the owner of the animal. So you always want to make sure that it's up to date and it's correct, whether that be joint names, single names, whatever it might be. It's used on a lot of documentation. So if you needed any strict vaccination protocols, so for instance, if I was to export a puppy out the country, they're generally going to need rabies, and also like for a pet passport as well. It's really important to identify that this dog had these vaccinations on this day, and therefore it will get the certificate they need, or whatever the documentation is. There's a clear, again, audit trail to what's happened. Microchipping is really important. It's one of those, it can sometimes get rejected out of the body. They can sometimes fail, and they can also travel. So it goes into the scruff of their neck, but they're meant to be coated in an anti-travel coating. I don't know how much that is. I think it depends on the dog, their activity, what the texture is underneath the skin, but they can travel. So I have seen dogs with them on their shoulder blades, round by their chests. So it's always worth just keeping an eye on where it's gone to, that's for sure. In other countries, to show your dog, there would need to be microchips because that's all checked on the paperwork when you enter the show. So across Europe, it's used a bit more in depth. So microchipping is really important. When you go and pick up a puppy, you should be given their microchips detailed, and you should be given the protocol to transfer the dog into your name. Now, I will tell you, a lot of the registration databases, and you don't have any choice really on who the breeder uses. They just tell you, I've registered them with these people. This is how you transfer the puppy into your name. If you were to own multiple dogs and you didn't want them all on different registration systems, say you had like 2 dogs on one and then a third dog on a different one, you could register that third dog onto the other registration system, but they're going to charge you basically. You can move dogs across to make your administration easier. Now, what you have to be aware of is a lot of these companies nowadays will automatically enroll you into an annual renewal. And I tell my puppy people, basically, once you've got the dog registered in your name, reply to that email and say, please take me out of any annual renewal, memberships that you might have signed me up to. Unless you're moving house every 3 months, it's a waste of money. But if you were to move house, you might have to pay a fee to do that, and it probably is more expensive than annual renewal. But if you have no plans in moving, then I wouldn't be in that, or possibly look at, hopefully it's done to the account rather than to the dog. So that's why I'm saying amalgamating them into one place might be a more sensible thing to do. But your puppy, when you collect them, shouldn't show any signs of being microchipped, if that makes sense. You'll just take them to the vets for your vet check, and by habit they will scan them, probably for insurance claim purposes. They'll want the puppy's chip number on their system, so they will scan the dog and update the details on their system. Microchipping is the only legal requirement the breeder needs for that puppy to leave at 8 weeks old for its new home. So anything else is extra, so to speak. But obviously it's not just extra, it's in the welfare of the dog. So let's move on to worming. I can talk from both sides of the coin, from a breeder's point of view and from a puppy owner's point of view. There are vets nowadays that offer these payable monthly health schemes, and apparently you get all your wormer and your vaccinations for free, and I don't know, you get 10% off your vet bill and all that jazz. I personally don't belong to any of these schemes, but then probably because I've got too many dogs, but I think they encourage an over-reliance on medical interventions, maybe is the way to put it. I just think it green lights over-treating and unnecessary treatments, because you're paying for it in the background, so you think you might as well use it. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing for the dog long term. Short term, it might solve a problem, but long term might be different. So when it comes to worming, puppies should have been routinely wormed. Now, back in the day, it used to be a strict 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? 2, 4, 6, 8, maybe 12. And then I think it's every 6 months after that point. Now, there's an ongoing concern about chemical resistance. I mean, obviously, we've seen it in humans with antibiotic resistance. And I've definitely witnessed it firsthand in flea treatment resistance. Any flea treatments that you buy in a pet shop, absolute waste of money, wouldn't even bother, they don't work. So you have to get the super strong stuff from the vets nowadays. And obviously they won't give that to you unless either you're in a monthly signed up plan or they've seen the dog in the last 12 months, and then it costs you more money, because if your dog's healthy, it hasn't been to the vets anyway. So it's all a bit of a joke. But they won't give you flea and wormer just ad hoc. Back in the day, you could literally say, oh, I need to worm the dogs. Can you give me this, this and this? Or they'd ask the dates, or can you pop in and just weigh the dogs and then we can give you the right amounts. They won't do that anymore. You have to go in, pay some money to see a vet nurse. It's probably not even a vet, to tell you everything you already know, to leave the wormer or the flea treatment, whatever that you needed. But likewise, I'm not a fan of just treating for the sake of treating. So I don't necessarily believe in preventative, because preventative is kind of what's got us in the problem in regards to the dogs becoming, or animals becoming, resistant to certain medications. So it's almost like a catch-22. I try to live with, especially with fleas, if there's a problem, assuming that you haven't got them, but if there's a problem, then you fix it. I would be dropping poison onto my dog every month in case I might see a flea, unless I'm higher risk. So, for instance, you got cats or other animals, or they're going to dog daycare all the time. That's another conversation. Then obviously you need to base it on the risk of your dog being exposed to them. So, going back to the wormer, previously as breeders, it was a bit OTT on the worming. And actually, what you'd find is after a while, the dogs would have these adverse reactions where they'd have really upset stomachs, or they'd literally react with temperatures, being unwell, because effectively you are still putting poison into your dog to kill a particular parasite. People seem to be a lot more relaxed now on the stance for the reason that I've given. So they might not follow a 2, 4, 6, 8. They might do a 3-week, which is quite good because you've started weaning the puppies in. So their gut lining has more than just milking it, which means they could probably cope with the worming that you're giving them, the worming poison. No, don't call it that, Sarah. The worming solutions that you're giving them, or tablets or whatever, powder. It comes in all forms nowadays. You can get liquids, powders, tablets, and drop-ons as well. Some might do 3, 5, 7, 9. I tend to do a 3-week, a 7-week, and then when you go to your vets, I always say pick up your wormer, so it might be like a 10, 12 week. To be honest, most of the time I won't even do the 3-week as a chemical wormer. I will actually rather take the alternative, which is to worm count. And you can do this with adult dogs. So rather than just assuming that your dog's got worms, a more holistic approach would be that you actually find out whether they've got worms first and then you treat them if they've got them, which makes sense, doesn't it? So there are companies such as wormcount.com and feeklab.co.uk, I imagine, where they will send you a kit and you send a nugget of poo off in the post. They give you the gloves and the containers and everything. And then they will actually look at that stool sample and tell you whether they can see worms, parasites, whatever present. And if so, what type they are, then advise you on what wormer you should be using. A bit like eating healthy. Eating healthy is more expensive than buying a McDonald's, though nowadays that's questionable. But it's the same with holistic healthcare. And I guess it's the same with humans, isn't it? Your gym membership's going to cost more than some of your shortcut fads. And holistic healthcare for the animals is the same. It's probably going to cost you more, isn't it, to send off a sample to worm count, to get it counted. And then if it comes back clear, then you'll probably draw even. But if it comes back, they've got worms, then you've got to buy the worm and treat the dog, haven't you? But at least it's more information. It tells you whether you're treating a problem rather than just being a bit trigger happy with your wormer and just doing it regardless. I prefer at 3 weeks to do a worm count because I buy like a breeding kit and it does mum while she's pregnant and then it does mum and pup at 3 weeks, and then you can do optional, you can do another one at 7 weeks, and then all the puppies get their own individual certificate. Or what I do like to do is that's when I will do one chemical wormer. They're of a good size, they're weighing like 3-4 kilos. They're on full weaned meals, so they're on decent food that they can actually cope with it better. And really, I do it because it's peace of mind for the new owners than it is for me, but I will generally do a chemical wormer. And that's because I would have picked up the type that I like, which is Milby Max or the Milby whatevers. You'll see it in the names. I can't think of any of the others. But it's a tiny little tablet and I've never had any side effects to it, so I don't mind doing it. And the reason I do it that way is because I'm going to the vets anyway to get a vet check. So I might as well just pick up the worm. It's no inconvenience. Then I say to my new owners, you need to take them to your vets for an independent vet check. I always say like within 7 days, get a vet check. And I don't recommend that you have their vaccinations done at this point, and we'll cover that in a minute. But I say get your independent vet check, because then that means that puppy's been checked twice, once by my vet and once by your vet. And so there should be no discrepancies between that. And pick up your wormer for when you need it, but you don't necessarily need to give it straight away. And then book yourself in for your vaccinations, basically. That's what I recommend to people. And we're going to come on to why I don't sell puppies vaccinated and why there's been a big change in this, which I'm all for because it's actually more beneficial for the puppies not to be vaccinated. But yeah, so that's the protocol. Then I generally try and talk people into worm counting. Even if you've got multiple dogs, you can literally pick up a little, as long as you can identify who's poo's who, or you're present while it's happened, you can actually put a pooled collection. So it's not like you've got to do it for each individual dog. You could just do a pooled collection. And then if worms are identified, then you worm everybody anyway, because you generally wouldn't just worm one dog and not the others. You might as well just do everybody and get on top of the problem. So yeah, just putting it out there, holistic approaches to healthcare are definitely there. They do other screenings as well nowadays. So for instance, you could do Giardia could be screened for. There's quite a lot. You can do lungworm. The lungworm screening, a blood test is actually more accurate than the stool, but obviously you'd have to then have the wider conversation. How am I going to get the blood out of the dog? That's something just to bear in mind. I had a dog with it, and which I've never experienced before, but it was because she subtly started coughing. The UK will be because they've either eaten grass or they've drunk out of a puddle. Like very rarely will a dog eat a slug, but they may easily lick and ingest something that's been directly in contact with something like that. So that's how a dog could easily contract lungworm. Problem with lungworm is that it actually thins there's quite a few symptoms to it, but it thins the blood. So for me, if I'm breeding from a female, that is not what I want, because God forbid if they need a C-section and then we've got a dog where the blood won't clot, that's a massive drama. So anyone that's breeding needs to be really on top of that, because it's not something that's talked about that often, but it does exist because I've had a dog with it. And I think that was because she drinks out of puddles. Yeah, and the only sign that she gained is just a subtle coughing, like a clearing of her throat. Now, people say, well, bulldogs do that all the time, but all of my stuff's all BOAS tested and I have really good breathers. So the fact I had one dog just slightly clearing their throat was really apparent. And I just knew straight away it was lungworm. And to be fair, the treatment of that was just a drop on. It wasn't even like a tablet or anything. It was just a drop on and it worked. So it's all good. Again, find the problem, fix the problem. All is good. But in regards to the vaccination, so I don't sell any of my puppies vaccinated, and it's not because I'm too tight to spend money on vaccinations. Obviously, taking them to the vets anyway, which is also a good part of their socialisation, going out in the car and experience car journeys and that kind of thing. Which reminds me, have advice and done well. I think he's just laid down and gone to sleep. It's not that I don't want to spend the money, but there's a wider conversation for two different reasons. One is about the age that it's being done, and the second one is about what actually has been given in part of the vaccination protocol. So let's tackle the first one. Puppies originally have been given as early as 6 weeks, which is just crazy now. The first one from 6 weeks originally, I don't even know what it is currently nowadays. It might have been pushed up to 8, but from 6 weeks, then you're meant to wait 4 weeks, and then you do the second one. So you could do 6 weeks and 10 weeks. Now, the reason they do 2 is because a puppy, if the mum of the puppy is a healthy girl, well cared for, and she is up to date or has evidence of a good immune system, then the puppies will inherit her immunity, because same with humans, when you're first born, a mum will have colostrum first, like it's called first milk, it's golden nectar. It isn't milk, it's colostrum, and it has all the antibodies that a puppy might need, or any baby might need, to build their immune system while their gut's still open. And then their gut closes generally around 24 hours. And then mum's milk starts to kick in, and then they're on to milk. So the golden nectar just keeps them hydrated, gives them all the immunity, and then milk kicks in, and then that's obviously for them to feed the body for it to grow and develop. So if you've got a healthy, happy mum and the pups have all latched on and had that good colostrum, that puppy, and it's been studied by the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, so WSAVA. Google them. There's loads on their website and there's a whole puppy protocol. But if you have a healthy mum and colostrum's good and seemingly healthy puppies, they should have mum's maternal immunity up until around 13 and a half weeks. And then it slowly fades off. And then that's when the dog would need boosting and improving, which is when you'd have your vaccinations. So back in the day, when people were doing 6 weeks and then 10 weeks, you were giving it to them while they still had immunity. And then you haven't given it to them when the natural immunity drops. So that's crazy. Actually, it's coming back to me now. If you were to then do 3 vaccinations, so then you do another one after the 10 weeks, which needs to be after the 13 weeks to make sure that they've got immunity, which is crazy. It wouldn't be vaccinating any puppy 3 times. So if you push it back to 8 weeks, then you would do the 8 weeks and then the 12 weeks, which is roughly when, 13 weeks, 12 weeks, that's roughly when the inherited immunity starts to fade away, that you've then boosted it up with the vaccine. Now, my vet luckily is quite holistic, and I like the protocol that he suggests, which is you do 10, if not 12 weeks, then you wait 4 weeks, and then you'll begin second one at 14, if not 16 weeks. So you're way after the maternal immunity is dropped off. So this is why you have to do 2, because the early one is only if you have a puppy of questionable heritage, that you don't know the status of the mum, you don't know how healthy she was or not, then yeah, obviously you go in and boost it as soon as you can. But when you know you're buying a puppy from a fit and healthy, health tested parent that's all up to date with her health status, then you don't need to be vaccinating so early. And another problem is also, before we go any further, there is a concern about if the breeder vaccinates and then they leave for their new home and then the owner does the second part of the vaccination protocol, if their vet doesn't use the same vaccination brand, then they have to start all over again. So then now you're doing the 3 vaccinations that you didn't want to do. It's just overkill. Why are we putting all these chemicals into such small puppies? It's crazy. That's why nowadays, and it's spreading even more, most people won't vaccinate their puppies. And I can see it from the outside in, because when you're buying a puppy, back in the day, it looked shady that your puppy wasn't vaccinated, because you're kind of thinking, well, do you not care about this puppy? But what we did 10 years ago to 20 years ago is different from now, because obviously the science is forever being discovered and evolving. We need to keep up with current practices. If anything, I'm probably slightly skeptic about anyone that does sell a puppy at 8 weeks vaccinated, because to me, that sounds like selling a done for you product. I want this to be perfect, that you take it, you keep out the vet's way so nothing gets discovered about the dog until it's possibly too late. So it's almost too perfect. And we know that's not in the puppy's best interest now, for all the reasons that I've given you. But it seems that rather than either the breeders aren't educated to know that and have that conversation, so then you question anything else about what their skill set is, or they just want to package it up nice and pretty for you and make the sale of the puppy as easy as possible. But to me, there is very little positives to it, because it's not in the best interest of the puppy, and it's not in the best interest of actually explaining and educating the puppy owner. So I'm always a little bit dubious of that. But then also, if we then layer on the bigger concern about vaccinations in themselves. Now, I don't know the ins and outs, I'm not a vet, and your puppy will be given a combination of drugs, and I probably should read up on this a bit better, or I've done some research, but you've got, it's like parvo, lepto, something and something off the top of my head. You can have different strains and different combinations of those depending on where you are in the world to which are most relevant. So for instance, total side note, in England, we don't have to do rabies as standard, but in other parts of the world, because rabies is an issue in their country, they would do standard rabies protocols. So that's what I'm saying. It's all relevant to the risk and where you are to what you might need. And say outside of that, in other parts of the world, America might be standard protocol, haven't got a clue. When it comes to rabies, for instance, some countries, they say, as long as they've had the vaccination called, like they can come into the country, some countries will say, you can have the vaccination, but then we actually want you to blood test 4 weeks after to prove to us that the dog has immunity. So even then, they're not just happy a vaccination is good enough. You need to prove it. And I once did have a dog that had the vaccination, still didn't have the immunity. So then I had to have another vaccination. Now, I tell you that because there are dogs having reactions to their puppy vaccinations. And to me, to sell a puppy at 8 weeks old where you just whacked a load of wormer in it, like you're overloading the system. You whacked a load of wormer into it, then you take it for its puppy vaccination, so it's got a load more chemicals in it. Then it goes to a new home, it's in a new environment. So probably at the time where its immune system is the most lowest is then it just gets exposed to all this new stuff. And then you'll have owners say, oh, the puppy's not been well, it's got squits, it's not coping too good. I truly believe that's just system overload. It's just too much. And I can honestly say I've not had any dogs poorly transition to a new home since I haven't done puppy vaccinations and since I've changed my worming protocol. And I say to my owners, like, you get the puppy home, obviously take it for its vet check within the first week, pick up your wormer, then I would wait another week, do your wormer, and then I'd wait another 2 weeks or at least a week and then do your first vaccination, because then that means they've been in your house 3, if not 4 weeks, fully settled in, they understand your routine, their immune system has been developed for the new environment that they're in, and then you can start developing their immunity through chemical channels. So that would be my recommendation. Now, there's all this panic about, can you let the dog in the garden, all that kind of stuff. You need to remember they have mum's maternal immunity until 13 and a half weeks. So yes, they go in the garden. Yes, I would let them socialise with family dogs that are fully to date with their health screening or status. I wouldn't have any problem with it, because socialization window is actually quite important. So you don't want to hinder that by restricting access to the dog and the exposures that it has because you're worried about it picking up some bugs and germs. But there is a big concern about vaccinations and certain parts, certain elements of the vaccination that are causing reactions in dogs. And the big one is lepto. You've got lepto 2 and lepto 4. And so that's just the number of strains that are in the core vaccination that's being given. Now, all you have to do is Google or look on Facebook and you'll see tons of concerns about people giving their dogs lepto 4 and having reactions. And then you'll see the scientific response saying, like, I don't know, the reactions is 1 in 1,000 or something or other. I have some reservations over statistics, full stop. But in my opinion, most reactions are not being correctly logged that it's a reaction to a vaccine because of the delay of the reaction. Unless the vaccine's given straight there and then, and the dog then like literally falls over, starts convulsing, then obviously it's really obvious that that's a reaction. But we know that it has to metabolize into the body, doesn't it? So it's not going to be straight away. It's going to be hours, days, weeks afterwards that you're going to potentially see a reaction. And then they're not logged as a vaccine reaction. So I don't believe the stats that are out there personally. The problem is most owners that are aware of the problem want to give L2. They don't want to give L4, lepto 2, not lepto 4. But the problem is there seems to be some manufacturing crisis, and there must be on vaccinations full stop, because I randomly remember reading an article about how the government in the UK are trying to make sure that we don't have shortages on, and it was animal meds. So there obviously is a farmer issue, obviously not making enough money. And so anyway, L2 is quite hard to get hold of. I don't know, maybe it's more expensive and the vets are trying to keep puppy costs down because they know once they've hooked you in as a puppy, you're going to probably stay with them until they're old and grey, a bit like a bank account. Once you're signed up as a kid, you very rarely change. People are just set in their ways. So they probably just want to keep those initial costs down, where if they probably opened up the conversation and said, look, we're going to have to charge you an extra 20 quid, 40 quid or dollars, whatever, to have L2, people will probably pay it. But we just don't seem to have those conversations quite concerningly. But there's a big concern over L2. So some breeders that are aware of this will actively try and find vets that only do L2. I would say avoid L4, like to any of my puppy owners. But if your vet only has L4, then this is another argument to leave it as late as possible. Don't be doing it in a young puppy at 8 weeks. Or anything like that. Do it as late as possible and hope that you don't get any reactions. And to be fair, I've had dogs had reactions, and I've had very big dogs, not even bulldogs, have react. But the vet would never log it. They would just say it's a separate condition. And as far as I'm concerned, it's all a bit of BS. It's all a bit questionable. So my recommendation is that you do it as late as possible. My other recommendation is that you don't do annual boosters. When the puppy gets to a year old, you need to come in and do your boosters. Obviously, if you signed up to your monthly plan, it's all free. They want you in. I don't and haven't for decades done any follow-up boosters, and I don't need to because I actually blood test the dogs to see what their immunity is. Now, it doesn't actually cover lepto. It's actually for the other core vaccines. So if you want lepto to be covered, and lepto is generally carried near water, like rats and that kind of thing. If you live near water, then yeah, maybe you deem yourself to be higher risk and you want to keep up to date with your leptos. If you don't, there's a question to be had to whether you should be doing lepto every year anyway. But you can titer blood test. But rather than just assuming, a bit like with the worming, rather than just assuming my dog hasn't got immunity or my dog's got parasites, why don't we take a blood test? Let's send it off. Let's have it analysed. And actually, some vets do it in-house. Some, they will send it off to a lab. And then they will tell you the immunity level of your dog. And then, and only then, if your dog doesn't have enough immunity, that you then give them the booster vaccinations. That would be a sensible thing to do, wouldn't it? And typically the protocol is that you would actually do the titer blood testing for 3 consecutive years. And then if you If they've always been good, you go to once every 3 years. I can speak from experience that I have never done a booster vaccination. I do the routinely blood test, all of my dogs, but I would say my breeding dogs, obviously, for the reason of this conversation, I'm always even more proactive with it because I'm interested to know. And I've never had a puppy or a dog come back after a year not have enough immunity that they would need their boosters. Well, isn't that a shocker? So again, it's going to cost you more money. The blood test probably costs more money than the vaccinations, but it's the principle of it all, isn't it? And the fact that you're reducing your chance of your dog having a reaction to a chemical. And I think there's a question to be had about in regards to chemical buildup as well. I cannot make liable case against this, but you begin to see patterns. So for instance, recently, a dog I bred died of kidney problems at just 4 years old. Now, obviously, I'm mortified about that because I'm the breeder. Obviously, I supported the dog owner through the situation as it was unfolding because it just seemed so untypical. We thought it might be food and various bits and bobs. I sort of recommended, I think we'll probably need to talk about tiered treatment plans as well, which is covered in my Star Puppy plan. But I suggested that they get a second opinion. Second opinion that was remote kind of said, yeah, none of these results look good, like he's in kidney failure. And unfortunately, ultimately, he died. And I just thought, this is crazy because if his parents are still alive, he was a solo puppy. So we've got no litter mates as a benchmark, but it just didn't stack up. I just don't have those concerns like in my bloodline. It just didn't stack up. So thankfully, I was grateful that the owners actually sent off his kidneys for autopsy to find out like what was the cause. Was it like what form of disease was it? Was it congenital, hereditary? Like what's the deal? Anyway, good for me that the results come back as I thought. It wasn't hereditary, it wasn't congenital. So then they said, well, it could be something like a toxin build-up. So he's been exposed to it a long time ago, and the toxins that built up in his body, I'm led to believe that you can seemingly have no kidney issues, but they only be functioning at like 30% of their capacity. So that by the time you see the symptoms, the problem is a really big problem. But they said it's a possible toxin build up in the body, some kind of autoimmune system. Like they didn't really know. And it's interesting because this dog lives with 2 other dogs that I bred, and neither of those, one of them being his son, one of them will be related but remotely, but they're all in the same environment, and none of those have had this problem, like seemingly touchwood have this problem. And so it wasn't until I was having this conversation about vaccinations with somebody else that they said to me, what was his vaccination status? I thought, oh, do you know what? I haven't got a clue. So I said to the owners, send me a picture of his vaccination card. Well, blow me down with a feather. This dog has had L4 from a puppy up until he died. So for his whole life, he's had L4. So he'd had over 4, 5, 6 L4 injections. So I don't know. We can't prove anything, but they're saying a toxin build up, and there is the evidence of a lot of toxins being put into a body. I couldn't take it to court. I can't argue any grounds on it, but I don't believe in coincidences. So obviously I've advised the owners not to do that with the dogs going forward, like the other dogs that they've got, and find L2 if they can. And also L3 actually exists, which I thought was laughable when one of my vets told me there was an L3 available. And yeah, they were right. I was quite shocked. It must be a brand that isn't popular with anybody else because I've never heard anyone else mention L3. But yeah, so some of my dogs have had an L3, but I've always left them older anyway for the reasons that we said. So I hope you take away from this quite a lot. And I know it is quite full on because this is an ever moving topic of conversation basically, and it's evolving as we're learning more as owners. But just because your vet gives it to you for free on your little pet plan doesn't mean it's the best thing for your dogs. So basically, don't freak out if you buy a puppy that isn't vaccinated. It's probably best for the puppy. Do your worming. Take your puppy for your vet check when you get it within the first week or whatever's written in your puppy contract. Take them for your vet check. Pick up your wormer. Let the puppy settle in for a week. Then do your wormer. Then let your puppy settle in for another week. Then do your first vaccination. Hopefully that's around 10, if not 12 weeks. do all the things, still take the pup out, socialise it sensibly, don't hinder any of that development. They've got maternal immunity up until 13 and a half weeks if mum is all good. And then take your puppy back for the second vaccination over 14 weeks and order your worm kit count. So when you want to worm check the puppy at 6 months, that you've got the kit already there. And then when you get your reminder come through the door that your booster's needing, you can go on a website. If you Google vaccination, if you go on that website, you'll find vets that actually do the vaccination, which is the titre blood testing to find out whether they actually need their boosters. And then there's actually also labs that you can send bloods off to. So even if your vet's being a bit of a pain in the butt, I would rather pay my money, get them to do the blood draw, and you can send it off to yourself. So there's a company called Dragon Labs in the UK. You could send the bloods, fill out the form, and then you'll get the results. And then you can forward it onto your vet so they can log it on their systems. If they're going to be that awkward about stuff, you're not at their beck and call. You should be doing what's best for your dog. And if you listen to the podcast where Isabel, the canine nutrition coach, talks about nutrition, there's reasons these big corporate companies are in dog food because they make money, and it's no different. These same companies are buying veterinary practices up. Why are they doing that? Because it makes them money. So you've got to be a little bit wise, people, as to what you're being sold. And it's not necessarily always the vet in front of you, it's the wider picture of what they're preaching and what their protocols are and how that's been funded. Hopefully that's added some clarity into what you should be doing and what's expected for a healthy, happy puppy to continue a nice, holistic healthcare routine. I hope you've enjoyed the listen. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something from this, because ultimately that's the whole point. And of course, I will be back next week with another important, exciting and Bulldog relevant episode. Bye. Before you go, head over to bulldogownersclub.com if you fancy a bit of support with your dog, help finding a puppy, or joining one of our fortnightly informal chatty community calls.